Okay, so start off with the double thigh to shin. My contact's going to be here. I make sure before I get going that your shoulder's not off the table. Let's say you set yourself up like this. Can everybody see that? That's not going to work. Your patient's going to feel like they're falling off the table because no matter what I do, that's going to be a pivot point, and you're going to feel like you're falling off the table unless I totally crank your upper back like that and keep you back. And I don't want to do that. So we'll scoot back like that. That's perfect. If you have to, get them at a little bit of an angle. Like their upper body can be back, we can scoot the lower body forward, like that. That's fine. Then, at my contact, we're gonna palm the basketball. Now please, palm the basketball. Don't do this, and then that, somewhere in the middle of this setup. Because that's just gonna put extra pressure on the issue. It's not gonna make it any better. In fact, it's probably gonna make it worse. It's probably gonna hurt your wrist as well. Because when you're hyperextending your wrist like that and you're thrusting on it, it's going to hurt. And at the very least, it doesn't improve this setup at all, so it's useless. So this is much better. And in fact, hopefully I showed you this. When you set that AS up and you get everything right, and your contact's here, you can take that contact away and still have the same amount of pressure that you would need for the manipulation. The hand there just helps you guide the force. It's not producing the force. And that's where a lot of people end up screwing their. Are you visualizing Star Wars? That's what's going on. Yeah. Saw that. Use the force. A lot of people end up saying, "Oh, this one hurts my wrist," and then there've been a lot of workarounds that a lot of docs have shown. I don't think any of the docs in the physical medicine department are going to show a lot of this, but using the forearms and stuff like that. And those are all okay, but if you need to do that, you're not setting this up right. You're hyperextending your wrist and you're going to hurt yourself. I mean, there are some scenarios like if you don't have a hand, or if, let's say, you broke your wrist and you're in a cast, you could actually do one of these workarounds. I'm not going to focus on a lot of those. If it's hurting your wrist, chances are you're either hyperextending it and putting way too much force into that hand, or you're probably too far forward, and that caused you to hyperextend your wrist. So you don't have to do that. Watch my wrist the whole time. Most of the time, when I get into the right spot, my wrist is like this. So it's really neutral. Like my wrist is neutral there with a little, like 12 degrees of extension, that's a neutral wrist. Most of the time it's there. Maybe a little bit more extension than that, but definitely not hyperextended like this. Okay? So you have to pay attention to that when you're setting this up. If your wrist is hurting you, chances are you're doing way too much there. The second part is I need to do this scoop and flex. And this has to happen all at once. And in that order. This is a step that I think a lot of students just kind of started to ignore, and then you just try to skip ahead to the next few steps. So this has to happen. I pound the basketball, I scoop the tissue as I flex the hip up and around like that. Notice where I'm a little bit behind my contact. So I keep this scoop and flex pressure here, and I scoop my body back. So now I'm exactly where I need to be. And I'm almost where I need to be. So according to our rule, we don't need to roll this patient over that much. I might do this. That's it. All right?
Yep.
Where are you feeling that?
Just feels like there's a lot of tension.
A lot of
right
tension.
there.
That's good. That's good. Where?
Right here.
Like the whole, yeah. Like this kind of tension?
Mm.
Like opening tension or twisting tension?
Twisting.
Twisting. I don't know why that's there.
Maybe opening that up.
So here, like this.
Oh, no.
Don't change. I
No,
know
it's
what
fine.
you feel.
What do you feel?
I don't know. Tension. Yeah, like tension.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
But not this kind of tension.
Oh yeah, that's what I felt before.
Okay. So
She was less.
she twisted herself a little bit. So you got to be careful. If your partner sets themselves up, sometimes they set themselves up like that, and that's a lot of twisting in the low back. And when you felt that, it's because we were actually twisting the low back more than we were actually moving the SI joint.
Okay.
And you have to be really careful with that. So I'm a big fan of scooting that shoulder under. If their shoulders are flat on the table and their pelvis is up like that, they're completely twisted in the low back. So we do pull this arm out a little bit, but that's not to put a ton of torque in there. It's to just give them a platform for their shoulder. So make sure you're not feeling like you're being twisted a lot. That is important. When we get into the sacral torsion adjustment, we're going to add a little bit more twist in there because there is a little bit of a twist. Okay, so we get in there like this. I don't have to roll you over too much. I'm right here. So now This hand is just to make the patient feel nice and stable. I'm not pushing because that's when we get that twisting, that torsion. And what I'm gonna do is, I keep all that tension, I keep that scoop, I keep that flex. I come up like this. Which way do you think I'm gonna drop?
Straight down.
Like this?
When you're,
A little superior.
Which way? Yeah, that way. Like that. See what happens? When I drop, my knees, to drop, I have to bend my knees like that. When I bend my knees like that, watch what happens to her hip. Flexion.
It's flex.
So that's where we're getting this dynamic drop, where this is going like that as I'm dropping on it, and I'm dropping on it, go ahead and keep yourself up on the table. I'm dropping on it like this as I'm flexing. So it's got to be in this direction that I'm dropping. My feet are facing this way. Let's untorque you for a second. My feet are facing this way, and my body's facing this way, so I'm kind of at like a 45-degree angle. Some people in the last class were like, oh, in line with their shoulder. Yeah, sure, whatever. Like this. 45-degree angle to the table, in line with your shoulder, it's all the same thing. Facing the other corner of the table, it's all the same thing. I don't want to be like this, and I don't want to be like this. Because that force is going to come in at some 40, and this is going to change a little bit. If I had to roll you over a lot more, it would be more like this. If I had to roll you over a little bit less, it would be more like that. So it's somewhere in here, in this arc, my drop's going to go like that, okay? And I have to be facing that way. So my feet are also pointed in that direction. And when I do that, when I drop, my knees bend, and when my knees bend, because they're behind the shin, it flexes the hip. I'm not doing this, though. We call that humpy. I don't want to do that. And that could also really hurt your low back if you drop like that and arch your low back. So what I'm actually doing is dropping my entire body onto my contact as just one unit. Rather than thinking about legs or upper body, I'm just throwing myself into my contact. So everything happens all at once. And that'll take some practice. Some of you may be focused a little bit too much on the legs. Some of you may be focused all on upper body and then nothing happens down here. We got to coordinate that a little bit. It's almost like I'm lunging forward a tiny bit.